The first thing I noticed wasn't her scars. It was her hands. They never stopped moving. Not once. Even standing at rigid attention in the center of the briefing room. Even while Colonel Harris was reading off her assignment like it was just another line item on a logistics report, her fingers kept twitching, looping, pulling at something that wasn't there. Like she was tying invisible knots in the air. I'd seen that before. Not on a battlefield. Not in training. In a hospital. Burn ward, 3 years back. Guys who couldn't stop replaying it. The blast, the screams, the moment everything went wrong. Their hands moved just like that. Trying to hold on to something. Or maybe trying to keep it from slipping away. Staff Sergeant Price. The colonel said, snapping me back. This is Specialist Taris. Effective immediately. She's assigned to your command for cross-species combat integration. I looked at her again. 7 feet tall. Lean, armored frame. Alien in every obvious way, but the emptiness in her eyes? That part was human enough to make my chest tighten. She didn't look at me. Didn't look at anything. Just stared somewhere past my shoulder, like the room didn't exist. Her hands kept moving. Tying. Pulling. Repeating. She's your responsibility now, Harris added, already turning away like the conversation was over. You'll get her combat ready. Combat ready. I almost laughed. They hadn't sent me a soldier. They'd sent me a ghost. And they expected me to bring it back to life. Her name was Taris. I didn't learn that from her. Not at first. She didn't volunteer anything. Didn't speak unless directly ordered. And even then her voice came out flat. Like the translator implant was doing all the work and she wasn't really behind it. I got her file instead. Late that night, sitting alone in the barracks with a half-finished cup of coffee gone cold in my hand, I scrolled through the report they'd dumped on me. It was thin. Too thin for someone they expected me to rebuild into a soldier. Specialist Taris. Kethvari Diplomatic Corps. Linguistic Specialist. Cultural Liaison. Not infantry. Not even close. She'd been stationed on a civilian orbital platform above New Jakarta. Meridian Annex, 12. I recognized the name immediately. Everyone did. It had been all over the feeds for weeks after it happened. A flash. A pulse weapon breach. And then nothing. 12,000 souls. Coalition personnel, civilian staff, diplomatic envoys. Gone in less than 10 seconds. No evacuation. No warning that mattered. Just a bloom of light in orbit, and then silence where a station used to be. I scrolled further. Survivor count, 27. Taris was one of them. Recovered from an escape pod drifting beyond the debris field. No physical injuries beyond minor dehydration and shock. Psychological status, stable. I stared at that word longer than I should have. Stable. Yeah, I knew that kind of stable. The kind that let you stand, walk, follow orders. The kind that fooled people who'd never looked too closely. The kind that let you pass every evaluation because you knew exactly what answers they wanted. The kind that meant everything inside you had already burned out. I closed the file and leaned back, rubbing my face with both hands. For a second, I saw something else. Not the barracks, not the datapad glowing in front of me, but sand. Endless, choking dust. Nevada wastelands. Operation Glass Ridge. I could still hear it if I let myself. The comms screaming, the sudden shift in gunfire patterns, the realization that we'd walked straight into it. Ambush, clean and perfect. My squad had trusted me. I'd led them there. 11 names. I didn't keep a list. Didn't need to. They were always there, just behind my eyes, waiting for the quiet moments. I exhaled slowly and pushed the memory back down where it belonged. Then I looked at her file again. Translator, not a fighter. And now they'd put her in combat armor and handed her to me like she was a piece of broken equipment that needed fixing. I almost respected the cruelty of it. The next morning, I found her exactly where I'd left her. Training bay, standing at attention. Same posture, same empty stare, same hands, moving in those small, repetitive motions like she was still tying something only she could see. She hadn't slept. Or if she had, it hadn't changed anything. You're early, I said, stepping into the room. Her head turned slightly, just enough to acknowledge the sound of my voice. I was ordered to report at 0600, she said. It was 0550. Yeah, I muttered. That tracks. I walked a slow circle around her, not hiding the fact that I was evaluating. Old habit. You learn more from how someone stands than what they say. Her armor didn't fit right. It had been modified, sure, extended joints, reinforced segments to accommodate her species structure, but it was rushed work. The kind you do when you don't expect the person wearing it to last long enough for it to matter. Her stance was technically correct, balanced, centered, but there was no life in it. No readiness. No intent. It was the stance of someone who remembered how to stand, not someone who expected to move. You ever held a weapon? I asked. Yes. How many times? A pause. During evacuation procedures, I was issued a sidearm. Issued, not trained. Did you use it? Another pause. Slightly longer this time. No. I nodded once, like that told me something new. It didn't. I stepped in front of her, forcing her line of sight to meet mine. It took a second, but eventually, those amber eyes locked onto mine. And there it was. That emptiness. Not fear. Not confusion. Just absence. I'd seen that look in a mirror more times than I could count. You're not a soldier, I said. It wasn't an insult. Just a fact. I am assigned as one, she replied. Same flat tone. Same perfect compliance. I almost smiled. Yeah, I said quietly. So was I once. She didn't react. Didn't ask what I meant. Didn't care. Her hands kept moving. Tying. Pulling. Repeating. I watched them for a second longer. Then I made a decision. All right, I said, stepping back. Here's how this is going to work. She didn't move. Didn't blink. But I knew she was listening. I don't care what your file says, I continued. I don't care what command thinks you are, or what they want you to become. I pointed toward the far end of the training bay, where the obstacle course stretched out under harsh overhead lights. Out there, none of that matters. Silence. Out there, I said, my voice dropping just a little, you either move or you die. Her eyes didn't change, but her hands slowed, just for a second. Then they started again. I nodded once. Good, I said. At least something in there is still working. I turned and started toward the course, not checking if she'd follow. I didn't need to. A second later, I heard her footsteps behind me. Light. Precise. Empty. Just like everything else about her. They had sent me the weakest alien soldier they had. And standing there, listening to those hollow, perfectly measured steps, I finally understood what they'd really given me. Not a trainee. Not a partner. A test. And I had a feeling neither of us was supposed to pass it. If you've watched this far, then this story is really interesting to you. Please confirm it by clicking like under this video. It doesn't cost you anything, but it will help me understand what story to publish for you next. Let's move on. Training started brutal. Not because I enjoyed it. Not because I thought pain fixed anything. But because silence like hers didn't crack unless you hit it hard enough. So I hit it. Again, I said, as Taris pulled herself up the wall for the fourth time in under 10 minutes. Her movements were precise. Efficient. Technically correct in a way that made it worse. There was no hesitation, no wasted motion, but no drive either. She climbed like she was following instructions written somewhere deep inside her, not like she cared whether she reached the top. She dropped down without a sound. Again, no complaint, no hesitation, just movement. That was the problem. I'd trained rookies before. You expect fear, frustration, even anger. You expect mistakes. You expect something human, or close enough. Taris gave me none of it. She ran drills. She hit targets. She followed every command exactly as given. And she felt like nothing. Like training a machine that had learned to mimic a person. By the end of the first week, I pushed harder. Harder than the schedule allowed. Harder than command would have approved if they'd bothered to check. Longer sessions. Shorter breaks. Combat simulations layered on top of physical exhaustion. I wanted to see where she broke. Because everyone breaks. Even me. Especially me. You're holding back? I said one morning, circling her as she reset her stance after a sparring drill. I am performing within assigned parameters, she replied. Yeah, I said. That's the problem. She didn't respond. Of course she didn't. Again, I said, raising my hands. She moved immediately. Fast. Technically flawless. Predictable. I blocked, redirected, countered. Every move she made was correct, and completely empty. No intent behind it. No instinct. Just execution. I swept her legs. She hit the mat hard. Again. She stood. Same stance. Same empty eyes. Same hands twitching faintly at her sides. Even now. Even in the middle of combat. Tying those invisible knots. I attacked this time. Faster. More aggressive. She reacted exactly as trained. Block. Step. Counter. But there was no adaptation. No anticipation. Just reaction. I pushed harder, forced her back, pinned her, stopped just short of striking. You see that? I said, breathing heavier now. You're doing everything right, and you're still losing. Silence. Her gaze fixed somewhere past me again, like I wasn't even there. That was when I made the mistake. Maybe that's how it happened, I said. The words came out sharper than I intended. On the station, her hand stopped, just for a fraction of a second. But I saw it. I didn't stop. Perfect procedures, correct responses, and it still didn't matter, right? Her head tilted slightly. Not curiosity, not confusion, something else. I stepped closer. You followed every rule, every protocol, and everyone still died. The air in the room changed. It was subtle, but it was there. Thousands of people. I continued, my voice lower now. All those words you translated, all those negotiations, and in the end, none of it saved them. Her hands weren't moving anymore. They were still, completely still. I should have stopped. I knew I should have, but I didn't. Tell me something, Taris, I said. When it happened, did you try to help them? For the first time since I'd met her, she looked at me. Not past me, at me. Those amber eyes weren't empty anymore. They were sharp, focused, and something deep inside them cracked open. She moved. Fast. Faster than anything she'd shown in training. Her strike came straight for my shoulder, aimed perfectly at a nerve cluster that would have dropped my arm if it landed clean. I barely got my guard up in time. The impact still sent me back a step. Good. I adjusted my stance. Again, I said. She hit me again. Harder. No hesitation this time. No perfect form. Just force. I blocked, redirected, countered, but she didn't follow the pattern anymore. Her movements broke away from training. Less precise. More dangerous. Alive. She drove forward, striking again and again, each hit carrying something that hadn't been there before. Emotion. Rage. I let it happen. Let her push. Let her swing. Let her finally stop being empty. She came at me again, wide this time, overcommit. I stepped inside her guard, turned with the motion, and swept her legs out from under her. She hit the mat hard. I was on her a second later, pinning her shoulders. She struggled. Not with technique. With anger. Let me up, she said. Her voice wasn't flat anymore. It shook. No, I said. Her mandibles flared slightly. I didn't know exactly what that meant, but it felt like a threat. I will report. Do it, I cut her off. But you're not done yet. She stopped struggling. Just enough to look at me again. And now I saw it clearly. Not emptiness. Not absence. Pain. Raw and unfiltered. You think you're the only one carrying this. I said quietly. Her expression didn't change. But she didn't look away. 11, I said. That's how many I lost. The words sat between us. Heavy. I knew all of them. I continued. Knew their habits. Their jokes. Their plans for when we got back. My grip tightened slightly without me realizing it. We didn't get back. Silence. Her body stopped resisting. Completely. I gave the order, I said. I walked them straight into it. The room felt smaller. Like the air itself was pressing in. For a second, neither of us moved. Then slowly, something in her shifted. Not gone. Not fixed. But different. I am sorry, she said. The words were quiet. Careful. Like she wasn't sure she was allowed to say them. I exhaled. Yeah, I said. Me too. I released her and stepped back. She didn't get up right away. Just lay there, staring at the ceiling. Breathing. Thinking. Feeling. Finally, I rubbed the back of my neck. That, I said after a moment, was your first real move since you got here. She turned her head slightly toward me. Rage is messy, I added. Breaks rules. Ruins form. I shrugged. But it's better than nothing. She pushed herself up slowly. Her stance wasn't perfect anymore. Her movements weren't clean. But when she looked at me again, she wasn't empty. And for the first time since they'd dropped her into my unit, I thought maybe, just maybe, they hadn't sent me a lost cause. They'd sent me a spark. They just didn't realize it could burn. That night, I couldn't sleep. Not unusual. What was unusual was why. Usually, it was the same cycle. Close your eyes, see the desert, hear the calms, feel the moment everything goes wrong on repeat until your body gives up from exhaustion rather than rest. But this time, it wasn't the past that kept me awake. It was her hands. I'd seen the way they stopped when I pushed her too far. The way they went still right before she snapped. The way they moved again afterward. Faster, tighter, almost frantic. Not random. Never random. There was a pattern there. There had to be. I gave up on sleep somewhere around 0200 and pulled on my boots. The base was quiet at that hour. Most of the lights dimmed. Only the low hum of systems and distant footfalls from night rotations echoing through the corridors. I didn't have a destination in mind, but I knew where I'd end up. The training bay door slid open with a soft hiss. She was there. Of course she was. Sitting on the same crate she'd used earlier that day, back straight, head slightly lowered. No armor this time. Just the underlayer suit, fitted close to her frame, making her look smaller somehow. Less like a weapon. More like someone who didn't know what to do with herself. Her hands were moving, slower than before, more deliberate. I didn't say anything at first, just leaned against the wall and watched. Her fingers traced patterns in the air, looping, pulling, tightening, releasing, over and over again. There was a rhythm to it. Not mechanical, not mindless, intentional, like each motion meant something. After a while, she spoke without looking at me. "You are observing." "Yeah," I said. Hard not to. A pause. It is not intended for observation. Most things aren't. Her hands didn't stop. "What is it?" I asked. Another pause. Longer this time. I thought she wouldn't answer. Then, "It is called Veth Kai," she said quietly. "A memory binding ritual." I straightened slightly. Memory binding. Her fingers tightened into a loop, then pulled it closed. "We preserve what is at risk of being lost," she continued. Moments. Faces. Words. Another loop. Another pull. Each pattern holds a fragment. I watched her hands more carefully now. "Like tying knots," I said. She tilted her head slightly. "Yes." Something about that word hit deeper than it should have. "Why?" I asked. Her hand slowed. "Because forgetting is a second death," she said. The room felt colder. For a second, neither of us spoke. Then I pushed off the wall and walked over, stopping a few steps away. "You think this keeps them alive?" I asked. "No." Her voice didn't change. "It ensures they are not lost." I nodded slowly. I understood that. Better than I wanted to. "Does it work?" I asked. Her hands paused. Just for a moment. Then resumed. "It allows me to function." Not the same as healing. Not even close. But it was something. I hesitated. Then sat down on the crate across from her. For a while, we just sat there. Two soldiers in a quiet room, surrounded by equipment neither of us really cared about, watching invisible threads being tied and retied in the air. Then, without really thinking about it, I tried. My fingers moved awkwardly at first. Clumsy. I didn't know the patterns, didn't know what each motion was supposed to mean. So I did what I knew. Basic knots. Loops, pulls. Simple, mechanical motions burned into muscle memory from years of training. It felt stupid. At first. Then something shifted. Not all at once. Just slightly. The noise in my head, the constant pressure, the replaying fragments, didn't disappear. But it slowed. Like someone had turned the volume down just enough to breathe. I stopped moving. Looked at my hands. Then at her. She was watching me now. Not with emptiness. Not with curiosity. Something else. Recognition. "It is imperfect," she said. "Yeah," I replied. "Story of my life." Her mandibles moved slightly. I still couldn't read the expression, but it didn't feel hostile. "You are not preserving correctly," she added. "Probably not." I shrugged. "But it's doing something." She considered that. Her hands slowed again. Then, carefully, she adjusted one of my motions. Just a small change. A different angle. A tighter pull. "Like this," she said. I followed the movement. Tried again. Better. Not right. But closer. We sat there for a long time after that. Not talking. Just working. Loop. Pull. Hold. Release. Repeat. At some point, I realized something. The room didn't feel as heavy anymore. Not empty. Not safe. But quieter. And for the first time in months, when I finally lay down later that night, I slept. No desert. No screams. No 11 faces waiting behind my eyes. Just darkness. And the faint memory of invisible knots holding something together long enough to rest. The next morning, I saw her differently. Still broken. Still carrying more than she should. But not empty. Not anymore. And that changed everything. Because somewhere between those loops and those silent hours, training had stopped being about turning her into a soldier and started being about keeping both of us from falling apart. The call came at 3:47. Not the gentle chime of a scheduled alert. Not the low-priority ping you could ignore for a few seconds while your brain caught up. This one hit like a hammer. Emergency deployment. All available personnel report to Hangar Bay 3. Civilian transport under attack. I was already moving before the message finished repeating. Boots. Jacket. Weapon. Muscle memory took over while the rest of me struggled to wake up. The corridor outside my quarters was alive with motion. Doors opening, footsteps pounding, voices sharp and focused. War didn't wait for you to feel ready. It never had. I stepped into the flow, already running through possibilities in my head. Civilian transport meant low defenses, which meant whatever hit them either didn't care about resistance or knew there wouldn't be any. Neither option was good. I didn't look for Taris. I didn't need to. She was already there, standing at the intersection ahead of me, fully geared, her movements precise but faster than I'd ever seen them before. No hesitation, no delay. She fell into step beside me without a word. Something had changed. Not fixed, not healed, but sharper, more present. We ran together toward the hangar, the metal floor vibrating faintly under the distant hum of engines spooling up. What's the target? I asked as we moved. She answered immediately. Coalition civilian transport Aurora's Reach. Orbiting New Austin. Multiple hull breaches. Boarding signatures confirmed. I glanced at her. She hadn't checked a datapad. Hadn't looked at a display. She'd pulled that straight from the transmission. Translator instincts. Still there. Still working. Of course it is, I muttered. New Austin. Another station. Another memory. I saw it hit her. Not in her face. Not in her posture. In her hands. They slowed. Just slightly. The rhythm broke. For a fraction of a second, she wasn't here. She was somewhere else. Another orbit. Another explosion. Another moment where everything went wrong and nothing could be fixed. Taris. She didn't respond. We kept running. Taris. This time, I grabbed her arm. She stopped. The corridor surged around us, other soldiers pushing past, but for a moment it felt like everything narrowed down to just the two of us. Her eyes weren't focused. Not on me. Not on anything. That same hollow distance from before, creeping back in. The name, she said quietly. It is similar. Yeah, I said. I noticed. Her mandibles shifted slightly. Tight. Controlled. This is inefficient, she added. Fear usually is. I am not afraid. Then what are you? A pause. Longer than it should have been. I am remembering. That was worse. Fear you could fight. Memory? That just sat there and waited. I tightened my grip on her arm slightly. Listen to me, I said. Her eyes flicked to mine. Not fully present, but closer. People are still alive on that ship, I continued. Right now? Not in your memory. Not in the past. I leaned in just a little. Right now. Her hands started moving again. Slow at first, then faster. Loop. Pull. Hold. Release. But this time, it was different. Not frantic. Not breaking. Focused. Grounding. She exhaled slowly. I understand, she said. Do you? I do not know, she admitted. Honest. I respected that. But I will not remain inactive, she added. There it was. Not confidence. Not certainty. Choice. I nodded once. Good, I said. That's all I need. I released her arm. We started moving again. The hangar doors were already open, the dropship waiting with engines hot and ramped down. Crew shouted orders, loading gear, checking weapons, locking in positions. Controlled chaos. The only kind that works. We boarded without slowing. Inside, the atmosphere shifted instantly, tighter, louder, more focused. The hum of engines vibrated through the deck as we strapped in. A lieutenant I didn't recognize started the briefing mid-flight. Transport's taken heavy damage, he said. 3 confirmed boarding points. Hostiles are hegemony strike units. Expect close-quarters combat. Priority is evacuation support. Secondary is clearing hostile presence. I checked my weapon, then checked it again. Beside me, Tari sat completely still. Not frozen, not empty. Still, like something coiled. Her hands rested on her knees now. Not moving. That was new. First combat op, I said quietly, just loud enough for her to hear. She didn't look at me. How do you feel? A pause. Then, uncertain, she said. Good, I replied. Means you're paying attention. Another pause. Also angry. I glanced at her. There it was again. That flicker. That spark. Yeah, I said. That part helps. The dropship shuddered as it locked onto the transport. Metal grinding against metal. Pressure equalizing. The door mechanisms engaged with a heavy clang. Everything got very quiet for a second. That moment right before it starts, where you either freeze or move. I stood. She stood with me. Side by side. Same line. Same direction. Her hands lifted slightly. Just once. A small motion. Like she was tying one last knot. Then they stopped. The ramp dropped. Air screamed past the opening. And chaos rushed in. She didn't hesitate. Didn't look back. Didn't freeze. The weakest alien soldier they had stepped forward into the fire. The first thing that hit me wasn't the enemy. It was the sound. Air screaming through torn metal. Emergency alarms pulsing in overlapping tones. The sharp, irregular crack of pulse fire echoing down corridors that weren't designed for combat. Then the smell caught up. Burned insulation. Ionized air. Something metallic and wrong that always followed hegemony weapons. Move, someone shouted behind me. I was already moving. Boots hit the deck of the transport hard. The impact traveling straight up my bad leg like a warning I didn't have time to listen to. The corridor ahead was narrow, flickering lights casting everything in stuttering shadows. And at the far end, contact. Six-limbed silhouettes pushing through a breached hatch. Hegemony strike units. Of course it was them. I raised my weapon. Taris left. I didn't need to check if she heard me. She was already there. We opened fire together. The first exchange was fast. Brutal. Close enough that there was no room for hesitation, no time to think beyond the next movement. One of them dropped. Another surged forward. I shifted, fired again. And something changed. Not around me. In her. I saw it out of the corner of my eye. Taris moved differently. Not faster. Not stronger. Different. Before, she reacted. Now she anticipated. A strike came in from the right. One of the hegemony units lunging past its own line, angling for my blind side. I didn't even see it. She did. She stepped into the gap before I could turn, her body cutting across the space like she'd been there a second earlier than she should have been. Her strike wasn't perfect, it wasn't clean, wasn't textbook, but it was exactly where it needed to be. The creature went down hard. She didn't pause, didn't hesitate, flowed into the next movement like she was following something I couldn't see. We pushed forward, clearing the corridor in bursts of motion and noise, step by step, breath by breath. The rest of the team fanned out behind us, securing sections, dragging the wounded back toward the docking point. But up front, it was just us. Taris, contact left. I see it. Of course she did. She always did. Another wave came through a secondary access hatch. I adjusted position, ready to cover. And she was already moving. Not reacting. Not following. Leading. She slipped between two attackers like she'd mapped their paths before they even chose them. Her movements weren't about force. They were about placement, timing, understanding. The same instincts that once read languages. Now read war. I realized it mid-fight. Mid-breath. Mid-trigger pull. They hadn't sent me a broken soldier. They'd sent me a translator. And I'd been too busy trying to turn her into something else to see it. Taris. I called out. She didn't answer. Didn't need to. She was already where she needed to be. We reached the central junction just as another team broke through from the opposite side. Civilians were clustered behind them, scared, injured, alive. Alive. That was the point. Hold this position, the lieutenant shouted. We did. And for the next few minutes, time stopped meaning anything. It was just movement, fire, impact, breath, again and again, until suddenly, it wasn't. Silence hit hard. The last of the hegemony units dropped, their bodies hitting the deck with dull, final sounds that echoed louder than the fight had. I lowered my weapon slowly, checked corners, checked the team, checked her. She stood a few steps ahead of me, still, breathing, alive. Her hands were moving again, fast, tight, loop, pull, loop, pull. Not controlled this time, not calm. I stepped toward her. Taris. She didn't respond. Her gaze was fixed on something in front of her. I followed it. A body. Civilian. Too late to save. I felt something tighten in my chest. Taris, I said again, closer now. Nothing. Her hands kept moving. Faster. More frantic. She's gone, I said quietly. Wrong thing to say? I knew it the second it left my mouth. Her head snapped toward me. Not empty. Not focused. Shattered. I know, she said. Her voice wasn't flat anymore. It broke. I know. Her hands stopped. Just like that. Still. Completely still. And for a second, I thought she was going to fall apart. Then, a sound. Behind us. Movement. I turned just in time to see another hegemony unit crawling through a partially sealed hatch. Damaged, but not dead. I raised my weapon. Too slow. Taris moved first. Faster than anything I'd seen before. Not controlled. Not precise. Not trained. Driven. She crossed the distance in a single motion, striking with a force that cracked through the creature's armor like it wasn't there. Once. Twice. Again. She didn't stop. Didn't check. Didn't hesitate. She kept hitting it long after it stopped moving. Taris. No response. Taris. I grabbed her. Pulled her back. She resisted for a second. Then everything in her just gave. Her body sagged against mine, the tension draining out all at once. I couldn't save them, she said, her voice low, fractured. I could not save them before. I tightened my grip. Yeah, I said quietly. I know. Her hands twitched. Once, like she wanted to start the motion again. Then stopped. I am trying, she said. I know. I do not know if it is enough. I looked past her. At the corridor. At the civilians. At the survivors being escorted out. It is, I said. And for the first time since the fight started. I believed it. Because I'd seen it. Not strength. Not perfection. Something better. She wasn't the strongest soldier in that corridor. Not even close. But she understood it. The flow. The movement. The intent. She didn't fight like a weapon. She fought like someone who knew what was at stake. And that made her dangerous. I glanced back at the bodies. At the damage. At the chaos we'd just walked through. Then at her. At the way she stood there now. Breathing. Shaking. Still holding it together. And I realized something. Clearer than anything I'd thought before. They hadn't sent me the weakest alien soldier. They'd sent me something they didn't understand. And somewhere between the training, the anger, and those invisible knots she kept tying in the air, I hadn't fixed her. I'd aimed her. And now, she was their greatest fear. They gave us medals. I don't remember what they said. Something about bravery. Something about cooperation. The usual words that never quite reached the people they're meant for. Taris stood beside me, perfectly still. But I could read her now. Not empty. Not broken. Holding. After the ceremony, we ended up on the observation deck. No orders. No noise. Just stars and silence. Her hands moved again. Slower this time. Careful. Controlled. Vethkai, she said. To carry what remains. I nodded. I think I get it now. She looked at me. Not past me. At me. For memory? I asked. No, she said quietly. For choice. That hit harder than anything on that battlefield. I extended my hand. For a second, she didn't move. Then, she took it. Her grip was firm. Real. Not a soldier following orders. Someone choosing. We continue? I asked. Yes, she said. Together. I looked at her. At the one they called the weakest. At the one who walked through war like she understood it. They sent me a broken alien soldier. I made her their greatest fear. And somewhere along the way, she made sure I didn't stay broken alone. Thank you for listening to this story to the end. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Write in the comments what moment in this story impressed you the most. And also check out the other videos that just appeared on your screen. See you in the next video.